Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order, that being the special council meeting of Warwick Township Council, September 25th, 2023, and it is 3:30. I remind council of disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Does anybody have one at this time they'd like to report? Seeing none, I want to welcome everybody who's tuning in by YouTube today. And now I'm going to do the acknowledgement of ancestral lands. We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered here today, Township of Warwick, is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, as well as the many Indigenous nations in Ontario whose footsteps have marked them for centuries. We also wish to acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 29 and Treaty 25 territories signed by Chippewa chiefs and offer our respect and gratitude for these lands. I'm going to go to number 5 now. That's councillor commitments. I'll start with Deputy Mayor Kallenberg. Do you have anything today for council? No, sir. Councillor Westgate.
I'll be away from September 30th, October 4th, and November 18th.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Councillor Morris.
Nothing new at all.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Let's go to councillors' items. I'll reverse it this time. Councillor Westgate, do you have anything?
Maybe Andrew or the staff could look into making a policy for backflow preventers. After the big flood there, we've had some homes that would probably, if they had a backflow preventers in, save them a lot of money. And I know other policies like Plimpton or other places like Plimpton, Wyoming have it. And maybe if we're paying for part of the installment of one or something, but I'd like us to have a look at it anyway.
Well, thank you, Councillor Westgate. You probably had a call maybe for some ratepayers as well. And Plimpton, Wyoming actually has a policy in place where they assist with those. And I think you mentioned it, and so did I perhaps. About that. Amanda, do you want to speak to that at all at this point in time?
Sure. Thanks, Councillor Westgate and Mayor Case. Yes, the township is aware of a similar of a potential policy framework that is in use by Plimpton, Wyoming, and with council direction, we'd be happy to review that and bring it to council for consideration.
So direction is all you need on this particular item, Madam Clerk. So is that the consensus of the room that we look into this policy and bring it back for council's consideration? I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. Very good. Thank you. Well, you can take that as direction then, Madam Clerk. Thank you. Councillor Westgate, did you have anything else today?
No, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Councillor Morris, did you have anything for today?
Just a request for Andrew, if he could come up with a report on these municipal drains that are leaving Watford, whether they need to be cleaned out, stuff like that. Do we have a report for the next meeting, please?
Okay. Very good. So that's clear. Madam Clerk, did you want to speak to that, or Andrew, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Case. So I'm currently in the process of applying to have permission to clean out a number of the drains, as well as preparing a tender to have them tendered out. So I'm in the process right now of doing that. I can provide that list to council if they wish.
Councillor Morris, does that do it for you?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Anything else today, Councillor Morris?
No, nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kallenberg.
I have nothing today. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a few things. The first thing I'd like to do today is I'd like to publicly thank Monty McNaughton for his 11 years of serving our community, as well as all of Lambton Kent Middlesex. And on a personal note, almost last year of being mayor again, the cooperation has been excellent, and the ability to hook us up with the right people that we need to speak to at the right time has been very much appreciated. So I wanted to, on behalf of council and the municipality, wish him well in his future endeavors. I'd also like to thank Minister Piccini, who was the Minister of Environment, and we had a very good relationship with Minister Piccini over the last year, especially now that we're into this landfill process again. So I'd like to just thank Minister Piccini. He's now the Labor Minister. So unfortunately for us, we lost two key people that we deal with, both being ministers that we had very good relationships with in Warwick Township. But I wanted to recognize both of them for their professionalism and their cooperation for the last year especially. So I wanted to do that. Also want to make note of the, and again, acknowledge John Ruth was our senior of the year for 2023. And we recognized John at an Optimist event in his honor in Warwick not that long ago. So wanted to make sure that we congratulated John once again on that. Also want to congratulate Barks and Bubbles on their grand opening last Friday. It's always great to see another new business open up on Main Street. So we thank the Turner family for their investment in our community, and Councillor Westgate and I had the opportunity to be there at their grand opening. So again, wish the Turners well and thank them again for making the investment in Warwick Township. Also want to make mention of Evan Van Gorp, a young fella, a hockey player for our community that's always been known to be a very hard worker, who signed a contract with the London Knights of the OHL. So we want to congratulate Evan here today for his accomplishment. And it just goes to show you hard work does pay off at the end. So that basically is what I got, Council, for today. So if we can, let's go to number 6 if we can. That's staff items. We have a verbal update from Amanda Gubbles, correspondence regarding the Housing Affordability Task Force. Amanda, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Mayor Case. As is provided on the agenda for council's review in advance of the meeting, the municipality, specifically the mayor, has received a letter from the new Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And the minister is looking for some feedback from local municipalities related to the province's Housing Affordability Task Force's recommendations, and they've asked that their top 5 recommendations that the municipality supports and rationale and comments be provided back to the province by October 16th. So since that timeline is in advance of our next regular meeting, I wanted to make council aware, and I'm happy to discuss preferences on facilitating that process for council.
Does anybody have any comments on this particular piece of business that was sent out to heads of council, but at the same time, it's important for us to talk to council about this and see if you had any priorities or any wishes when it came to this? Anybody at all? Otherwise, Amanda and I will work at it and get something sent through as long as everybody's okay with that. Consensus is that's okay. We'll leave it with Amanda and she and I will talk about it and get something out. Thank you very much, Amanda. Can we go to 6B then? A verbal update from Amanda Gubbles on the Project Zero campaign. Amanda, you're up again.
Thanks again, Mayor Case. Again, support documentation is provided with the agenda on some information on Safe Community Project Zero with Enbridge Gas. This is provided to council just in advance of a future announcement for Warwick Township. So soon we will be issuing a media release in partnership with Enbridge about Warwick's successful receipt of funding through this program and also participation. And what this means is Enbridge assisted Warwick with provision of, I think it's combination CO and fire detector units, a certain quantity. And our fire department will be visiting door to door throughout the municipality to check working CO detectors and smoke alarms. And it's my understanding both of our stations will support this endeavor. So just an advance notice of a future media release and more information to come for council.
All right, thank you very much, Amanda. And 6C, a verbal update from Stephanie Catrice, Economic Development and Communications Officer on wayfinding signage. Stephanie, do you want to speak to this?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Case. This is to follow up to the September 11th council meeting when council selected their preferred design for the wayfinding and signage project underway in the municipality. So council did approve the modern community identity concept. And this builds off of the existing color scheme, which will use the white backgrounds with the black lettering. And however, what was not included as part of that was the gateway signs. So what we had attached here was a few different options of the gateway signs. So before the final submission is presented to council, we would like to crystallize the color scheme for the gateway signs. So just open to your feedback for which of those you prefer, as they were not part of the initial family signs.
Okay, council, does anybody have any comments, any preference? Looking for comments? Not seeing any comments. I know we did pick the color scheme not that long ago. Nobody wants to speak to this one?
Well, I like the one that says, welcome to Warwick, or I think it says welcome to Warwick. I can't read I have to blow it up here a little bit. Yeah, no, it says Township of Warwick with the white background.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Morris. Anybody else have any input? So I guess you're looking for direction, are you, Stephanie?
Yes. So if we wanted to stick within the white and red concept, there are three different options. There's a couple different sizes. Two of them say Township of Warwick, and then there is a third that says Warwick Township welcomes you.
Deputy Mayor Callenberg.
I agree with Wayne, but I would say option 4, Township of Warwick.
Okay, anybody else want in on this? No? So does somebody want to, I guess, direction's fine, but a motion would be better? Councillor Morris?
Yeah, I got one quick question before we go to a motion. These are entrance signs from what I understand. Are they going to conflict with the ones we already have there that are stone?
Thank you, Councillor Morris. No, these ones will be placed in areas that are not currently with signage.
I guess my only comment is, are we overdoing it with the signage that we already have? And then adding another one not that far from that particular, the other one are wayfinding signs. This one, I guess, could be considered a wayfinding sign, but it's again identifying the municipality for which we've already got the other signs. That's my only question.
If I may, Mayor Case, there are other signs similar to these throughout the municipality. I believe on Confederation Line and Churchill, I believe, or is it Forest Road? But these would be replacing the ones that are there.
Okay, anybody else? So I guess, again, we were looking for some direction today to get this thing moving, if council sees fit. What's council's wish when it comes to this particular piece of business? Deputy Mayor Callen.
I'll make a motion. We go with option 4 for gateway signs.
Motion to go with option 4. Is there a second? Councillor Morris, you seconding that?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Or did you have a comment, Amanda?
Just, yes. Thanks, Mayor Case. So it's great that passed. Thank you for that direction. I just want to highlight further to Stephanie's comments that the reason for this coming to you today is to assist with facilitating the building and development of the signs to be installed prior to the end of the year, which is why you're seeing this at this juncture, so we can get the signs manufactured and installed so they'll qualify as part of the RED funding program Stephanie was able to obtain for the township. Just in case you're wondering why are you seeing this today, that's why, so that we can make sure we capitalize on that funding window. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Amanda. So I'll go back. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we have timed events, which we are about 15 minutes away from. We'll turn it back at 4 o'clock to those events. We're going to go to number 8, staff reports, if we could, please. So staff reports, the first one is 8A, and that's the comparative human resources policy.
Do you want to do that presentation?
Yes, Amanda, would you please make that presentation?
Absolutely, Mayor Case, and I'll keep it brief to fit within the time window available. To council's attention, I did append a presentation on this topic to our council agenda earlier today. So hopefully you have it. I won't share the screen for Councillor Morris. The intent is just to provide an overview summary in follow-up to a direction from council to review policies, human resources related policies in the county of Lambton. I was able to issue an online survey, which did allow for 10 municipalities, including the upper tier of the county of Lambton, to participate. And we are missing one municipality, being that of Lambton Shores. In addition to the online survey, I did consult with our staff team just to get an idea of the application and opinions on our current policies, just to help guide council on that moving forward as well. All of this information is provided to council just for information, and we're happy to take direction on additional steps as needed. You will see that the questions reviewed in the report and in the survey data provided are a bit broader than the questions council provided in their direct direction, which focus solely on sick time, personal time, and flexible work arrangements. And the intent behind that was just to, since I believe council wants to look at all of our policies to limit the amount of times we have to go back out to our municipal partners, although I'm happy to do that also as per council's direction. So again, we had 10 respondents, excluding Lambton Shores. The first slide data, so I think it's slide 3 of the presentation, just outlines what municipalities do have bank time or flex time. So you'll see that most do, with 80% making it available to administration and management staff, and 10% to administration staff only. And you'll see I always note where Warwick's current position is on each slide, just for your information. The next slide is how many hours are your non-union staff compensated for? So you'll see, like the majority, Warwick is compensated for, not the majority, 37.5 hours. 6 chose 35, 3 chose 37, and 1 chose the other option, which is 35 for admin and 40 for public works, which is the same as what, or in Warwick, our union team is also compensated for 40 hours. So just there is a change, and that's pretty common. Does an organization offer a regular day off program? This is, I'll say, locally known as the Happy Friday program. We can see that 9 respondents do offer this program, and 1 does not. Warwick currently does not offer this program. Moving on to sick and personal time. So you'll see on the table the summary of responses for each municipality. In summary, 30% or 3 of respondents have 6 days or fewer. 50% have between 9 and 13 days, and 20% have 18 days. And you'll see Warwick also included on this slide for our current current position. Here's an additional question on offering time in lieu in place, and you'll see that most do not offer that, with 1 municipality offering 10 additional days. So that's in addition to 1 week, and 2 others offering 1 week. Question 7. So this was just for, I thought we might be talking about this soon, coming into the holiday season. That was a good idea to collect this data. Most municipalities, 7 of the 10, do not close between Christmas and New Year's. Question 8 was, how are employees compensated for after hours meetings? And you'll see the breakdown in this slide. So Enniskillen was provided a per diem for staff for after hours meetings. A number of municipalities four listed provide flex time or bank time. Lambton County noted this was not applicable because their meetings are held during the day. And four municipalities noted other. And I do have the other responses available. So I will just read them to you, but these are available also in the data you provided. Sarnia, unionized staff received overtime or bank time at 1.5 times, and non-union just balanced workload to take other time off. Plimpton, Wyoming, the management receives a per diem and administration receives either a per diem or bank time. Petrolia provides additional days off in lieu, so they don't approach it in this method. And Don Euphemia, the clerk CAO is provided time off in lieu, so this is not applicable to the broader staff. Question 9 was, do you have a policy outlining work from home? And it looks like it's split that 4 respondents or 40% said yes, they do. And 6% said no, they do not. And as you know, in Warwick, we do have some policy parameters related to work from home currently. That's it for that one. Question 10 was, is there a limit? And so you'll see the division there. There were some comments on the limits that were provided here that I thought were worth noting. So in Oil Springs, staff are allowed to work from home if sick or unable to get to work during a winter storm. Sarnia, it's subject to supervisor approval, and in Plimpton, Wyoming, it requires management approval, but it's case by case. And in Lambton County, it's meant only to apply for exceptional circumstances. Question 12, overwhelmingly, Warwick is one of the only people with a volunteer policy, and Don Euphemia being the other. And then the other 2 questions were just, do you have these policies? And I do have these. When you want to review these, I have these in the background, samples of the policies for both professional development and training, as well as a vacation policy. The 2 key slides I just want to draw your attention to are the last 2 or 3, I guess. Overall trends is just that the regular day off or Happy Friday program is quite common in our county, with Warwick being one of the few who do not offer that currently. That's sick time allocations in Warwick match only 20% of respondents, with 50% of respondents providing between 9 and 13 days. A volunteer policy is not common, and work from home policy is not as common or has more details on limits or guidelines that Warwick currently does not have in place. And then additionally, I just thought council would be interested to know the trends from our internal consultation and appreciate everyone's on our team's feedback. Just the current we'd like to keep, or staff generally would like to keep the 37.5 hours work week. And what that means is not to move from 37.5 to 35. There is interest in a regular day off program. I'd say about 60% in favor. And if that were a policy option selected by council, the preference would be to have an option to opt in or opt out of participation. And just to note that it may not eliminate the need for bank time, flex time, just because of how it applies across the organization. The current sick time allocations do not always meet the needs of every staff member. They're supplementing with vacation time or other time. Work from home has been accessed by most for primarily training. 30% of our team think it's very important for flexibility and to assist with future recruitments of new employees as vacancies kind of come up. But 70% do not have a concern if this option was not available any longer. The volunteer policy, I learned, has very limited understanding. So if it was something we kept or we amended, definitely we'd need to better educate our team on how they can access it. But there was little concern if it was no longer available, if council chose to move in that direction. And then in terms of flexible work, it has been accessed by most, but to different levels, primarily because of work required after hours or looking to use it to accumulate time. So working extra time to balance off sick time. And 50% think it should not go away. And that 15 hours is not enough based on work cycle needs. So the policy should actually be expanded. And then the other 50% note that flex time is not required as part of their position. So it's of little concern if it's not available anymore. So happy to take any questions, but essentially appreciate the opportunity to review policies and happy to take council direction.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation, Amanda. We are missing one of our counselors today. He's off for obviously for some good reasons. I'm going to propose a tabling motion on this particular subject because there's a lot to think about, a lot to discuss, to our first regular council meeting in November, if I can get a seconder to that motion. Seconded by Councillor Morris. Is there any, well, pardon me, there's no discussion on the tabling motion. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? That is carried. So we'll deal with that in November. Lots of information to be had here and lots of discussion to be had. So thank you for that, Amanda. I appreciate that. So council, what we're going to do is we're going to go to 8B. We've got 3 minutes. If we need more than 3 minutes to talk about 8B, we'll take it. We'll come back to it. And that's a proposed update to the performance review of the CAO. There is a recommendation that goes along with it. This is basically adopting the County of Lambton model when it comes to this policy and process. Is there any questions on that? There is a recommendation. How does council wish to deal with the recommendation? Deputy Mayor Callum.
I'll move we adopt the recommendation provided.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Westgate. Any further discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to timed events. So I'll give everybody a chance to get back to 7, including myself. And the first order of business, we're going to give it 2 minutes because it is a timed event. We're going to take the 2 minutes and do it proper time. Do our planning staff wish to come forward while we got this 2 minutes? Maybe Ken, Johan, would you guys like to come up front in case there's any questions? Please. So we'll give our planner an opportunity to get settled in up here. And then we will start first part of our timed events, our delegation when it comes to rural severance. Yep. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to deal with the next piece of business, and that being the rural severance policy public meeting. And it's my responsibility to announce the following. The next item on council's agenda is the holding of the public meeting with respect to amending the zoning bylaw and council's consideration of bylaw to amend Warwick zoning bylaw 121 of 2012 to implement surplus farm dwellings severances in the township. Now I have to ask the clerk the method of given public notice. Amanda?
The notice of meeting was published in the August 31st edition of the Petrolia Independent.
And the date that notice was given.
Yes, August 31st.
Thank you very much. Any person requiring further notice of the passing of the bylaws should give their name and full mailing address to the clerk before leaving the meeting. So anybody that wants further information, just make sure you give that to the clerk before you leave, please. Any persons present who wish to make oral or written submissions should provide the clerk with their name and full mailing address. Also, all persons wishing to address the bylaw should ask their questions through me, the chair. So the clerk will now read any written submissions.
We have none, Mayor Case.
The planner will now give his report.
Thank you, your worship. Good afternoon, council. Ken Melanson from the County of Lambton. I'll keep the presentation on this matter rather short and sweet because we've been briefing you all along related to this matter. But a bit of history for Councillor Kellenberg, who may not understand the origin of this. During the official plan update that we did last year, council had requested to look into the matter of surplus farm dwelling severances as a means of retaining some rural population and tax base. So when we did the conformance review, we did that and we provided council with some policy related to the process and what needed to be considered. And council adopted those policies within the official plan update, which the county approved. The next step to implement surplus farm dwelling severances was to actually amend the zoning bylaw to provide the necessary guidance in your zoning bylaw to initiate the process, which is what's before you today. A couple of things that have to happen in the zoning bylaw are that there needs to be a no dwelling zone created, which you actually already have, which helped. And then we need to set the minimum standards for parcel size and things to consider, as well as establish a definition. It's important to understand that severances in the agricultural area of Ontario are heavily regulated by the province. They've used their ability through having the provincial interest in planning to set a series of very strict rules. One of which is that typically residential parcels can only be created through a surplus farm dwelling severance. And that's when a farmer has more than one agricultural property and is starting to consolidate them all into one operation. The excess dwelling is no longer required. They don't wish to be a landlord, so they can sever the parcel away. It's important to understand that only under the circumstances that a consolidation has happened and only subject to the various policies of the provincial policy statement, as well as the county severance policy and what you've established in your OP, can a severance move forward. So for example, if there's no farm consolidation, if it does not meet MDS, these are a number of things that if those are not achieved, then the severance would not be able to proceed. The process you've established in your official plan is that the rezoning portion, which is a requirement under the provincial policy statement, actually go first. And what that does is it allows council and the public to weigh in on the request and know that issues related to natural heritage, natural hazards, so potential impacts on drains or drainage or things like that are addressed by the applicant to move forward. Council will then hear, much like you are today, a rezoning request to a agricultural no dwelling zone, because you can only have one surplus farm dwelling severance if there's one house. So once that's severed off, the retained lands can never have no dwellings can go on it after that. It's farmland only. And that is a requirement under the provincial policy. Then what will happen is the severance would move forward with committee of adjustment for consideration. we'll get into, I'm sure there are questions about the policy or sort of the process that we'll get into the nitty gritty about as we go through questions, but provided with you or before you is a process map for the public, just to understand this in a simple plain language format, as well as an information form to give us the information we need to determine if a farm lot consolidation has occurred. So we are recommending that you approve bylaw 99 of 2023 to implement surplus farm dwelling severances. It will help you in retaining rural tax base and population, and that you direct staff to initiate the process and start accepting applications once the bylaw comes into force. Thank you, Your Worship.
Great, thank you very much, Ken. We will now hear from those who are in favor of the bylaw, and then after that, we'll hear from those who are opposed. Is there anybody who wants to speak to it from the public today that are in favor of the bylaw? Seeing nobody that wants to speak to it that is in favor, is there anybody present who wants to speak that opposes the bylaw? Sure. Would you mind coming up? Sure, if you don't mind, that would be good. That'd be great. So John, maybe if you can help with the microphone. So sure, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, it's a question for Ken. Under the consolidation, I'm confused at what that means. So if you have a farm with a house on it that isn't severed, like to get that, what do you mean by consolidating? To sever that house, the rest of the farm has to be consolidated. Can you give me an example?
So through your worship, under provincial policy, in order to have a surplus farm dwelling severance, you have to have what's called farm lot consolidation, which is I'm a farmer, I own parcel A, which has a house and a farm. I also own parcel B, which has a house and a farm, whether that's cash crops or livestock. I don't need house B. I don't live there, and I don't want to be a landlord. But I own the two properties, which can be part of my overall farming unit. So because I have these two properties, I can deem this house surplus to my operation and sever it onto its own titled parcel and sell it. But if all I have is farm A with a house and I don't have any other agricultural holdings, I can't sever that land because there is no consolidation. You have to have multiple properties, multiple farm lot properties that are under one operation. And that's provincial policy. That's provincial requirements.
So these farms, it doesn't matter if they're adjoining or where they are in the township, as long as you have multiple farms.
Through your worship, that's correct.
So Ken, sometimes people that have farms that are adjoining, they'll put them in different names. Maybe one in myself and my wife's, and then one in just mine and my wife's, so they're not consolidated in one. Does that affect anything?
So through your worship, so long as you can demonstrate, I won't say that it won't cause a problem, but it would be something that we would have to look at through the rezoning process. And that's the information that you would provide on the form, is you'd have to demonstrate a level of interest in the property. So how does that get recognized? So for instance, going back to my example, I may own farm lot A as me, but I may own farm lot B as Happy Farmer Inc., but I am the owner of whatever that company is. I have an interest in that company. So it really depends on the circumstance. But the information you provide will help determine that.
And the farm, if you're allowed to sever the surplus dwelling off of that farm, so you're saying that farm will be zoned, so it cannot be, another dwelling cannot be built on there.
Through your worship, that's correct. It can never have another dwelling. And that's
Even
provincial
though,
policy.
even though you wouldn't be building it on a separate lot, want to sever another lot off that, it would, that house would go with the farm if it was sold. That still wouldn't be
No,
allowed.
once the house is severed onto its own parcel, the
Yeah.
remnant piece, which is essentially farmland,
Yeah.
can never have another house,
A house.
ever.
Okay.
No problem. Thanks, Tim. Anybody else like to speak or ask any questions? Okay. Council, does anybody on council have any questions for Ken? Deputy Mayor Callenberg.
Yeah, Ken, just clarification, you, just if the portion severed, the farmer could build a storage shed or a grain elevator, anything pertaining to the farming operation. It's just regulation to dwelling, right?
Through your worship, that's correct. So the primary use of the remnant land would be farmland, which is agriculture. Agriculture can have all these, subject to whatever rules are applicable, can have additional structures.
Thank you. And one other question on your report there, you'd said that we still have to determine the lot size or the farm size of where we can sever, like whether retained acreage is 95 acres or 40 hectares or less or whatever. We still have to decide that, or has that been put in provincial policy already?
So through your worship, the minimum agricultural farm lot size has been determined through the Ontario Land Tribunal. Well, actually, its predecessor, the OMB, the Ontario Municipal Board, through the county official plan. So all of the planning remedies to change the number, the 38 hectares, are gone. They're done. OLT has done its job. That was the final opportunity. If there's a desire to change that, then the only option available to council is through the political mechanism. And as I've said to county council, because there's a number of other municipalities that are not happy with that particular number, the minister has the power to intervene in an official plan that is not before him or her, meaning there's nothing before them right now. There's no decision on the county official plan before them for any changes. So if there's political pressure or political advocation to the province and they suddenly decide to change it, we're not going to stand in the way. We'll be there to provide some technical background or expertise. But if the province was to intervene and suddenly change the number, then that's their decision. But it would have to be something that the political realm would advocate. There's no planning options left.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification. That's what I thought it was.
Councilor Westgate.
So what was that number? 38 hectares? Is that what you said you have to retain?
Through your worship, the minimum farm lot size for certain municipalities, including Warwick, is 38 hectares. Some other municipalities is 30.
Anybody else on council that has any questions? Seeing none at this time. Yep, Councilor Westgate.
And there's no way we can change that 38 hectares because a
Three.
50-acre farm, you couldn't do it then.
So through your worship, at this point, it's in the county official plan. Just to give some history, the county did actually not recommend any size requirement when the official plan for the county was being approved. That was a change done by the ministry, and we were directed to appeal that by county council, and we were unsuccessful. So as I say, all of the planning options are now exhausted.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Councilor Morris.
I guess, so is there no way we can go down to 30 hectares?
Through your worship, once again, all of the planning options are exhausted.
Anybody else? Yes, Councilor Westgate.
If you have two farms, say you have a 100-acre farm and a 50-acre farm, and you want to take the house off the 50-acre farm, can you put the 50 and the 100-acre together even if they're not connected?
Through your worship, it would depend completely on the configuration and if you could combine the two. And that would be something that we would be willing to look at with a landowner who comes forward. But if we're talking about parcel A and parcel B and there's parcel C in the middle, that's not going to work. So it purely, if they're touching each other and they're in different ownerships and the property owner is willing to look at a severance that would consolidate the remnant together, that could be looked at. But if there's an intervening parcel owned by someone else, that's never going to work.
I guess a little follow-up. I know one person would like to do this and there's a road between the two farms. How would that work?
Through your worship, likely not possible. Because then it would be a natural severance by means of a road allowance.
Anybody else? Only comment I'm going to make is this has been a fairly frustrating process at Lambton County where we've tried to get some bend, I guess, if I can put it that way, within the provincial government. And the provincial government continues to come out with bills such as Bill 23 and change them and go backwards on those. So it's been very hard to watch the bouncing ball as this whole process has unwinded. So again, I'll just make a comment that has been very frustrating. County councils tried to open up and look at some options, but unsuccessfully, as Ken has said. So anybody else, any other comments before I move on? Yes, Councillor Morris.
Just one, I'd like to officially say I am very disappointed in the 38 to 30, especially in Warwick Township, where a lot of people, the 402 took land off their property, or the CN Rail took land off their property, and in no fault of their own, they're going to be below the 38.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to move forward then. So the public meeting is now concluded. Council has 15 days from this meeting to decide whether or not to pass the bylaw. Council's decision will be mailed to those who have requested a copy. Any person or agency may appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal in respect to the bylaw by filing with the clerk of the Township of Warwick no later than 20 days after the day that written notice has been given. A notice of appeal must set out the objection to the bylaw and the reasons in support of the objection, plus the applicable fee to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Thank you very much, everybody who attended. Have a good day. Okay, thanks, Ken. So we are now, I don't know, do we have Peter online, Peter Pickfields?
Yes, I think we do.
Or maybe not Peter, but
We do, would you like me to-
maybe Alex? Yes, please.
No.
We have Peter. Oh, there's Alex. It's Alex. Hi, Alex. Can you hear me?
I can. Good to see you. Good afternoon, Mayor Case, members of council. It'll be me presenting the annual review this year to the council.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much, Alex. Alex is from Garrett Pickfield, and there are lawyers when it comes to environmental issues for the Township of Warwick, and also in charge of our technical review team. And Alex is going to make a presentation presenting the TRT findings for the past year. Alex?
Thank you very much. And I believe Ms. Gubbles would have circulated the annual review already to council, which was prepared by the Township's technical review team. I'm just going to move a couple of things around on my screen. I tuned in a bit early, so I was watching some of the earlier council, so I just need to move things back on my screen. Before I dig too deeply into the details, can you give me an idea, either Ms. Gubbles or Mayor Case, as to how long you'd like me to cover it? I anticipated about 20 minutes or so, but I want to know if that's on what you were looking for.
So normally we allow 15 minutes, but this is a big subject. So we'll make your presentation. You never know how many questions you may have from council. So we'll just play it by ear if we can, Alex.
Okay, fair enough. And I think I should be able to fit that time frame as well. So before we get into this year's review, I just want to have a brief reminder as to what this process looks like and why it's in place. So the technical review team, or the TRT as we call it, was established to conduct a peer review or an audit of the landfill's performance. So every year, Waste Management produces, it's a very lengthy report. I believe it's in the area of 900 pages on the landfill's performance. And the township's TRT is comprised of a number of technical experts in various fields who are responsible for reviewing this document and providing feedback as to whether the landfill is in compliance with all of its legislative and contractual obligations. So we've been conducting this review of the landfill's annual report for 14 years on what's called the new landfill, which was established in 2008. As many of you will know, the landfill has long predated 2008, and the older landfill was closed and capped, and a new landfill was constructed using more modern standards. So every year, Waste Management releases this report in the spring, and the township's TRT conducts a paper review of the report, and a few of the key members who need to go on site, they'll do a field investigation to verify some of the components themselves. Normally, we aim to come to council in August with the TRT's review. This year, it's a few weeks later due to some delays in receiving documentation and in booking a site visit for the TRT. So the result of this work is what you have before you, the draft annual review, which is about 157 pages long. And the shorter memo, I think it's 4 or 5 pages, which attempts as best as we can to summarize 157 pages into 4 or 5. So what happens is council will receive this TRT report in draft. And during today's council meeting, I'll be recommending that council approve forwarding this report onto Waste Management in draft. Once that is in Waste Management's hands, they then review the TRT's comments and provide responses of their own. That comes back to the technical team. We make some amendments and updates to the report, and then we come back to council with a finalized report, hopefully in a little over a month from now. Once it's finally approved, it'll be issued to Waste Management and the public. I know today it's a public meeting, but I mean it'll be issued in final form. And it's usually presented to the public in the PLC meeting in late November, the Public Liaison Committee. So that's the typical process. A few years ago, there were a couple lingering issues that we found weren't being addressed in the TRT's opinion. So we established a new protocol of scheduling a series of meetings between some of the TRT technical consultants and Waste Management's technical consultants in the fall. And that essentially allowed a conversation to happen instead of a sort of a switch, right? Where in the past, the TRT would provide some recommendations, Waste Management would review it and provide some thoughts, and then we'd be left with just kind of having those responses and moving forward. But this additional set of meetings has allowed some more dialogue, and we found it's been really, really helpful to resolve some outstanding issues that have previously gone unaddressed. And in my opinion, it's also led to some more creative solutions as well. So with that background, I would like to summarize some of the key outcomes of this year's report, which as a reminder is for the 2022 reporting year. The threshold issue that the TRT first assesses is whether the landfill is operating in compliance with its provincial and municipal regulatory approval requirements, or if there's any serious environmental concerns, leaking waste, those kinds of things. We're talking very, very big concerns. So at a high level, it continues to be the TRT's opinion that the landfill is generally well managed and operating following regulatory requirements. Similarly, on the financial side of things, you see the same thing. Landfill generally met its obligations on financial obligations, with a few minor adjustments that needed to be made throughout the year, which typically happens every year. There are a number of impacts that are noted in this report I want to highlight for council. So I think I have 3 here that are larger issues I wanted to bring to council's attention, and a few that are smaller ones that I wanted to provide updates on. After that, I'll just go through the recommendations that we've made for council, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So the first issue that stood out when we were reviewing the landfill's annual report this year is the number of odor complaints. The landfill has had a mixed record of odor complaints. They've gone up and down, but this year was a new high for odor complaints and total complaints by far. It's not really close to previous years. So to give you some context for that, in 2022, which is this reporting year, there were 73 total complaints received by Waste Management, and 68 of those were related to odor. I want to also point out at this point, the township also receives some complaints, which are not included in these numbers. So to give you some context for that, in 2017, there was 1 odor complaint. In 2018, there were 8 odor complaints. Now that did increase to 51 odor complaints in 2019, but some of those were attributed to a nearby biofertilizer operation that has since closed. So more recently, there were only, I think it was 26 odor complaints in 2021. So we've seen a drastic increase in the number of odor complaints this year. One of the reasons that Waste Management has attributed to this increase is issues with the landfill's gas collection system. And this issue has happened in the past as well. The TRT has recommended a couple of things to try and address this, including a deeper analysis of complaints to try and figure out where they're coming from, right? Is it from the landfill? Is it from the landfill gas collection system? Something else? Could it be from offsite? And the second piece is more frequent updates on the status of the landfill gas collection system, and especially any repairs. So if it's down, give us more of a proactive notice when it's down and when it might be back up, and keep updating us so that when those complaints come in, and especially to the township can say, you know, it might be because of this issue, you know, please forward your concern on to Waste Management. Also, as a result of this increase in total complaints, the TRT is recommending a meeting between the township and Waste Management to discuss the complaint response protocol to see if there's any additional changes that can be made to this process. Now, it's worth noting this type of meeting has happened in the past. And again, it's been really productive. But given the more recent increase in complaints, the TRT thinks that, again, it's time to have one of these meetings and see if there's anything else that can be done to try and lower the number of complaints. So a second notable issue I wanted to bring to council today is there were missing reports from the Ministry of the Environment. So when the landfill initially released its annual report, it attaches a number of appendices onto it. And one of them is any inspection reports from the Ministry of the Environment. So it's either the case, unless I'm missing something, it's either the case that Waste Management had these reports and didn't provide them, which would have just been due to an error, or that the Ministry of the Environment did not provide these reports to Waste Management at all. So they couldn't provide them to the TRT. We don't know, but the TRT is going to ask this question. Regardless of the answer, though, it is a problem that the TRT was not initially provided with this information because they do rely on it as an additional source of information to assess the landfill's operation. You know, as you can imagine, it's a lot of work for the TRT to go through the lengthy report released by the landfill. So in order to assist with that and see, you know, when the ministry goes on site and does their inspections, what do they see? That helps contextualize the rest of the information that's provided by Waste Management in the report. The last key issue that I wanted to provide an update on, it doesn't actually seem like it's an ongoing issue, but it does deserve an update, relates to automobile shredder waste. So the landfill has historically taken automobile shredder waste, which is essentially cars that have been ground up into small pieces. It's a good source of revenue and waste for the landfill, but it does come with some toxic chemicals in it. Now, the whole purpose of a landfill is to take waste, some of which has problematic chemicals. And the idea is landfills are sealed, right? They're sealed as best they can be. And at the end of their life, they're capped on top. So it's okay for some problematic chemicals to be in the landfill as long as they can be contained. The problem with this waste is that it has very small pieces. So when it's emptied out from waste trucks, it can get stuck in their tires and then it's tracked out onto the road or the highway. This has been an issue in the past. So again, for context, in 2021, the ministry found this automobile shredder waste on the highway in 25 out of its 27 inspections. So it was almost always seen off-site. Waste Management then stopped using it until January of 2022. And during this year, the ministry found it on the highway in 15 of their 32 inspections. So Waste Management voluntarily discontinued its use in August 11 of 2022. So I'm providing this report just to update council on this because it's been a bigger issue in the past. The TRT is going to ask the landfill waste management to confirm that automobile shredder waste is not currently being used. And if it is being used, the TRT has a recommendation that a more detailed plan be put in place to ensure that waste doesn't track out onto the road as it has done in the past. So those are three of the largest issues I wanted to flag for council and spend a bit more time talking about. There's a couple more. I think I have 4 smaller issues that I want to just provide brief updates on to keep council posted. So the first is with respect to landscaping. Every year you'll note in these reports, there are a couple trees that are dead that need to be replaced. It's very difficult to keep these trees alive in these difficult growing conditions, which can be slopes or soil that has a higher clay content. So this issue isn't something new, but I wanted to highlight that it's not necessarily the result of waste management doing anything wrong. It's just a very difficult problem to solve. And in this year, we've recommended we've made some recommendations that hopefully will help improve this year after year. On the related note to this, last year, the TRT recommended the release of a $5,000 letter of credit. The idea is that the township has a letter of credit so that if waste management, for whatever reason, doesn't do some of the landscaping things they're supposed to do, the township can then do that work and draw down from the letter of credit. So in the past, for example, that has included the construction of a picnic table, an accessible picnic table, sorry, to be more specific, bike racks, that kind of thing. Last year, the TRT recommended releasing this amount because the bulk of the landscaping work had been done. And I believe what happened, I wasn't in attendance at last year's meeting, but I believe what happened is council voted in favor of this, but it might not necessarily have been recorded in the minutes. So we're making the recommendation again that this be released just out of an abundance of caution so that it can be recorded in the minutes and that change can be made. Okay, the third one that I wanted to provide an update on is on TSS levels, that is total suspended solids. This is a measure of suspended particles in water, the landfill. Now, it's not quite this simple, but you can think of it a little bit like a body of water with high TSS is less transparent and more murky. It has impacts on aquatic life, that kind of thing. So there's not a requirement to reach a specific TSS level, but Waste Management has stated that it aims to achieve a target of below 100 milligrams per liter. However, every year this target is exceeded numerous times and by a substantial amount. To give you an idea, not in 2022, but in 2021, I think the highest that it reached was 32,000 milligrams per liter. So many orders of magnitude more. Now, every year the TRT makes recommendations as to how this can be lowered. And this year we saw fewer exceedances and the exceedances were less significant. So we're definitely seeing an improvement here. In the TRT's opinion, the exceedances are still too high and they have some recommendations to help address that, including one possible source for TSS. So this is a stockpile of some material that the TRT thinks rain might be coming down on it and bringing it into the water systems, which cause suspended solids in the water. Okay, lastly, with respect to leachate, the landfill generates something called leachate, which is a liquid that comes from waste, as all these materials, some of which are solids, some of which are liquid in the landfill, pile up. And especially as rain comes down, liquid is collected at the bottom of the landfill. It has some unhelpful chemicals, some toxic chemicals in it. This leachate is then either applied to the landfill's poplar tree system. So the landfill has some trees where it applies chemical leachate to. The idea being that these trees clean up the leachate. It's a natural way of accomplishing this. But there's too much for that system to take. So the rest of it is typically hauled offsite and treated offsite. So the TRT's had a concern with these leachate levels being too high. Essentially, the problem is if the landfill is like a mound, right? Think of it kind of like a triangle. If the water level might be here, you don't want leachate levels to be above the water table. It creates a risk that they could break out of the landfill. And these liquids that have chemicals that are undesirable might trickle down and reach sensitive receptors or environmentally sensitive areas. So the TRT has pointed this out for a few years. Waste Management has indeed started lowering the leachate levels. So there's definitely movement in the right direction. The TRT just continues to provide its opinion that the levels are still higher than we'd like to see, and we want Waste Management to meet certain benchmarks of removing it in order to lower the risk for this potential breakout. So those are the key outcomes I wanted to bring to council. I'm briefly going to go through the recommendations that we have in our memo, which are in the agenda as well, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So based on the result of this review, we're recommending that the township pass the following resolution. I won't read the whereas clauses because you'll be familiar with that, but the key resolutions are that the township direct our law firm, Garrett Pickfield, to forward a copy of this draft review to Waste Management for review and discussion. And that we request in a letter to Waste Management that they implement the recommendations from our landscape expert, that Waste Management be advised that the $5,000 letter of credit be released. This is for landscaping. That Waste Management review and address the specific recommendations and comments that are set out in the draft review pertaining to ground and surface water quality, landfill engineering, noise, air quality, and dust management, which are appended to the report. That Waste Management review and address the specific recommendations and comments in the financial audit, which is prepared by Bill Day. And with respect to the landfill financial assurances program, that Waste Management consider comments that the TRT has provided in the past on the financial assurances program. And before the next one is due, which is 2024, that they provide a draft copy of it for the TRT to review and provide comments on before this is submitted to the ministry, so that our comments can be considered and included. The next recommendation is that Waste Management provide a draft of its 2024 report to the ministry regarding the need for an environmental inspector at the landfill to the township for comment, and that a meeting be set with Waste Management to discuss the content of that report, again, before it's sent to the ministry. And the leachate management plan is being prepared this year by the landfill, so that Waste Management be asked to provide the township with a draft of the 2023 updating report to the leachate management plan, and that this be subjected to the TRT peer review before it's finalized. The next part of the resolution is that the township take the following steps in advance of discussions with Waste Management to improve the complaints responses protocol for the landfill. So that is to carefully continue tracking complaints received by the township with respect to the Twin Creeks landfill and report these to Waste Management. Second, to request a meeting with Waste Management to obtain an update from Waste Management on efforts to address outstanding items from our past meeting about complaints protocols, and to discuss options to advance solutions on these items. Third, to direct the TRT to incorporate the outcome of these previous steps into the final draft of the annual review for this year, which will be before council, hopefully in early November. And to maintain the practice of an annual meeting between the township and Waste Management to discuss continuing improvements to this complaints protocol. Lastly, that the township direct that Waste Management's response to the draft review and the above requests, together with the final report, be brought forward to Township Council at a future meeting for council consideration and approval. So that's the resolution that we've recommended, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you for your patience as I go through all of this material. It's a lengthy one.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Alex. Does anybody on council have any questions for Alex on his presentation? I'm looking around. It looks to be very thorough. Trevor.
Alex, are you recommending that the letter of credit be totally dissolved for landscaping? Because last year it was resolved to a level of 5,000, not all.
Yes, this year we're recommending that it be given up entirely, as the majority of the work that is required by Waste Management has been done. And for many of the items, the warranty period has also expired. So there are some items that might be beyond the warranty item. Like, for example, if a tree has died and it's already beyond the warranty period, we will continue to still ask that Waste Management replace it, but there might not be the same kind of lever to force them to replace it by drawing down from this letter of credit. So in the advice of our landscaping technical expert, the purpose of the letter of credit has been completed, and that's why he's recommending the release of it.
Follow up, Trevor? Anybody else have any questions on the presentation? Seeing none, there is a recommendation and a motion, as Alex has gone over. How does council wish to deal with that recommendation and that motion? Councillor Westgate, are you moving it? Thank you, Councillor, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Callenberg. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate your time. Well done. Thank you.
Good to see you, Mayor Case.
Oh,
and,
excuse
good
me,
to see-
before you leave, Alex, we got a question from Councillor Westgate.
I
Councillor
was just
Westgate?
wondering on timing for the PLC. We approved this today. When do they get it? And will you be able to report at the next PLC meeting, which is the end of November?
That's a great question. Through you, Mayor Case, that's a great question. So the timing is a little bit tighter this year, but we should be able to accomplish it all. As I indicated, we're scheduling already a series of meetings between technical experts. So those will happen in mid-October. What's going to happen is soon after this call, we're going to provide the draft report to Waste Management. They're going to start reviewing it. The technical experts will talk about it in mid-October. We will then update it and bring it to council. I'll have to speak with Ms. Gubbles about the timing, but hopefully in early November, and that'll go to the PLC for its, I think it's November 22nd meeting.
Thank you, Alex. Anything further, Councillor Westgate, on that? No? Very good. All right, Alex, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much for your time. Take care.
Take care. Council, I'm going to take everybody forward again to 8C, if we could, please. And that's the pre-budget capital direction that's being sought, report from our treasurer, Trevor Jarrett there. And he's looking for some direction. Trevor, did you want to speak to this at all?
Just a few words. We're tighter this year than in past. We've had somewhat of a bubble whereby infrastructure is now starting to come up to their knees. And I just want to make sure that rather than come several times, we align as best we can, because it's rather competitive between the various different department managers in terms of what they want and their wishes are, and they're going to fight for the best for their various departments. I want to make sure that we're not going to be at butting heads with what council's vision is for this term and without the guidance that we've had previously. I want to make sure that we hit it on the wall.
Well, I appreciate that. We just went through our official planning exercise, which laid out a lot of the direction moving forward. Financially, we realized it's going to be a tricky budget process this time, as it was last time. We now, have interest rates to partially thank, and also, managers' wish lists that we need to deal with. But I've always been a believer that you take on the budget process and council has to determine how many dollars it's going to take to run the business and what they want that business to look like at the end of the day. So I think it's a little hard to kind of look into a crystal ball and predict maybe what council is going to think after we look at all of the budget. Correct me if I'm wrong, council. Does anybody have any ideas or some advice for Trevor? But me, I think we really need to see what everybody's wish list is, and then we have to sit back and determine what we feel is a priority for us and the people that we serve. So does anybody want to speak to that, or am I right on the level? Councillor Morse?
Yeah, I have one question regarding the fire department rescue vehicles. I'd like to request a report from somebody, their ability to do the job past their, what we normally would replace them as. If they're not under the insurance program, I'd like to, we seem to be getting rid of these fire trucks and they're just like new. I'd like a report on how long they'll last.
So you're looking, is there, and I guess maybe, are there any regulations, provincially regulated things when it comes to a fire truck or a fire vehicle, safety vehicle that mandates that they have to be taken out of service after so many years? Am I correct, Councillor?
Yes, that's correct, especially the rescue units, because I don't think I think I read in there somewhere that these were not under the insurance clause.
Okay, well, thank you. That's a very good point. Anybody else have any questions or guys? Counselor Westgate?
Well, we already had the rescue trucks, one of them ordered, or no?
Yeah. The direction this year is to have them start scoping what a rescue vehicle would be. The anticipation was the cost would be in around the neighborhood of 400,000, and they've come back 800 to $1 million. And they haven't ordered, but they've scoped it so that we had this information coming forward. Without it, we would have been going in a little bit blinder.
No, I really no follow up on that. That's good to hear. And I know they've gone way up in price. But for the other departments, I would like to have the department head prioritize how they think it should go when it's presented to us. Especially the roads. I know it's more for Andrew, but he's on the roads every day and you know better which ones need to be fixed and what we need more than anybody else. So if we brought everything to us, we can knock some of it off, but I'd like it prioritized to us.
Deputy Mayor Kellenberg.
Yeah, just, I noticed your request for water main infrastructure. Now, we've talked about this before, but on Sunset and St. Clair and John Streets with the recent rain events, are we just including water main infrastructure? Are we going to look at the whole drainage aspect of those streets or that area as well at the same time?
Andrew.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. So typically when we have a road reconstruction project, we will look at all aspects. So sanitary, which typically we haven't been replacing, but it is getting near that age. So sanitary, storm, water main, curbs, asphalt, of course, and sidewalks. So we look at everything when we do the road reconstruction projects.
Anything further, Deputy Mayor? I guess maybe what I'm hearing, if I'm getting it right, is we're looking maybe for staff, the managers to score their projects in preference and give the supporting documentation on why they're important. Again, it is going to be a difficult year. We've just financed the new community hall. I mean, we're looking at a $9 million loan at a bigger interest rate than anybody ever planned on having. So all those things come into effect when we're looking at our overall budget. But maybe from what I'm hearing, it looks like maybe getting the managers to score the projects as a level of importance to them and bringing them forward to us. We do realize it's going to be a difficult year. That's not a surprise to anybody. And it's good to see that we're at least looking forward to what we need to do and looking at this budget process, which I think we start in November. Do we not, Trevor?
Yeah, we will make a presentation for November 7th, I believe it is, for operating and capital for 2024. And we'll prep everything at that point in time.
Thank you. And just one more comment. I do note that a lot of our capital projects probably aren't going to get done this year. A lot of them will not get done. A lot of it is because it's the lack of manpower that's out there in some cases to get them done. The system seems to be slow when it comes to engineering requests sometimes. So those things will be dangling in our next budget again, forwarded from this budget. So again, it'll be a process that we're really going to have to dig into, and we really do count on staff to bring us their priority list and the justification of why we can do it. And then we're going to have to chisel it to the point where we can set our priorities and make sure we can afford it moving forward. That'll be a council decision. So anybody else want in on this at all? No? All right. Does that give you enough, Trevor? Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, council, let's go to 8D if we can, and that's Parks and Recreation advertising sponsorship. And yeah, Ryan, did you want to speak to this at all?
Nothing too much further to add than what's already been identified in the report. I will just highlight that this project did come through the Parks and Recreation Committee. That group had their chance to, we had a good discussion on it. They provided some input and review and edits and have since directed myself, staff to advance to council today.
Thank you, Ryan. Did anybody have any questions on this report? There is a recommendation attached to it that came from the Recreation Committee. Anybody have any comments? If not, I would entertain a motion if council saw fit. Councillor Morris is making the motion.
That's
Do we have
correct.
do we have a seconder? Councillor Westgate? Further discussion of any? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Was there any new business, Madam Clerk?
No.
None at all. Thank you. So I guess this ends the open session of our meeting today. We are now going to go in camera pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001. We are going to go in camera to discuss number 2, 3, and 5. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Westgate and Deputy Mayor Cowenberg. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you.